What if the moment your whole life changed was the same moment you were too weak to stand? That was the truth for Beatatrice Norwood the instant her knees buckled on the Dry Creek Depot platform. The sun beat down on the wooden boards with a heat that felt almost cruel. Beatatrice clutched her small valise with trembling fingers as the world around her blurred. 3 days on the train from Boston had drained every ounce of her strength. She had survived on crackers and warm water, pushing herself forward only because the teaching job waiting in Wyoming was her one chance at freedom. But now, as she stepped off the train, her body finally gave out. The depot swayed in front of her eyes. The voices of passengers became faint. The mountains in the distance melted into the sky. She tried to take one step forward, but her knees folded, and she felt herself falling. The last thing she heard was a shout before her cheek hit the dusty planks, and everything went black. Across the road, Lucas Whitaker heard the commotion before he even saw it. He had just dropped off 3 Mustangs at the livery. At 30 years old, he had seen every sort of trouble Dry Creek could offer. But the worried voices at the depot made him stop in his tracks. He crossed the dirt road in long strides, dust rising around his boots. He pushed through the crowd gathering around the fallen woman. "Stand back. Give her some air." Her chestnut hair had come loose from its pins. Dust clung to her pale face. Her dress was wrinkled from travel, but Lucas could tell it was fine fabric. She was not a woman who belonged alone in a place as rough as the Wyoming Territory. The station master fanned her with his hat, while an older woman clucked in worry. "She dropped like a stone," the woman said. "Poor thing's been looking sickly since she stepped off the train." Lucas knelt on the platform. Her breathing was shallow, but steady. Her skin felt warm with fever. "Has anyone sent for Doc Pearson?" he asked. "He's out at the Miller place," the station master said. Boy broke his arm. Lucas made a quick decision. Waiting wasn't an option. She needs water and rest. With practiced strength, he slid an arm under her shoulders and the other beneath her knees. She felt light as he lifted her from the ground. Her head fell gently against his chest, and he caught the faint scent of lavender through the dust. "Her bag, Lucas," Mrs. Holloway said, pointing at a small carpetbag by the bench. "Grab it for me, please." He nodded toward the boarding house. "I'm taking her to Ma. That's the closest place." Mrs. Holloway hurried after him with the bag as Lucas carried the unconscious woman down the street. Folks stopped and stared, but Lucas ignored them. The woman's breath sounded strained, and a weak pulse fluttered against his arm. He pushed open the door of the Whitaker boarding house with his shoulder. "Ma, I need help." Martha Whitaker hurried from the kitchen, wiping flour from her hands. At 55, she had kind eyes and a sharp mind. One look at the woman in Lucas's arms, and she nodded. "Upstairs." "Blue room." Lucas carried her up the narrow stairs and laid her gently on the fresh quilt. Martha followed close behind. "Mrs. Holloway, fetch water. Lucas, smelling salts are in my room." He returned quickly, handing the vial to his mother. Martha loosened the woman's collar, removed her shoes, and cooled her face with a damp cloth. "She's exhausted," Martha said. "Probably hasn't eaten a proper meal in days." Lucas uncorked the salts and held them beneath her nose. A moment passed. Then her eyelids fluttered, and a soft sound escaped her lips. Her brown eyes opened slowly, filled with confusion and fear. "Where?" she whispered. "You're safe, dear," Martha said gently. "This is the Whitaker boarding house. You collapsed at the depot." The woman tried to sit, but she fell weakly back on the pillows. Mrs. Holloway placed her bag by the door. "My name is Beatatrice Norwood," she said, each word a struggle. "I'm the new schoolteacher." Lucas exchanged a glance with his mother. The town had expected a schoolteacher, but not like this. "Well, Miss Norwood," Martha said, "you won't be teaching until you regain your strength." Quote, "I can't afford." "The school board will cover your stay," Lucas said quickly. He would figure out the details later. Relief softened her features. "Thank you, Mr. Whitaker." "Lucas," he corrected, suddenly aware of his dusty clothes and unshaven jaw. His mother smiled knowingly at the blush that touched Beatrice's cheeks when she realized he had carried her. "Let her rest now," Martha said firmly, ushering everyone out. But even as Lucas walked to the livery to finish his work, he found his thoughts drifting back to the woman with the brown eyes who had fallen into his arms like someone dropped into his life by fate. Later that evening, Beatrice woke to warm light filtering across the room. Her head ached, but she felt stronger. A knock came. "Miss Norwood? May I come in?" Martha's voice. "Yes," she said. Martha entered with broth and tea. Beatrice's stomach growled at the smell. "When did you last eat?" Martha asked. "Yesterday morning," Beatrice admitted. "Then eat every bit. You're safe now." Quote. The kindness in Martha's voice eased something deep in Beatrice's chest. For the first time since leaving Boston, she felt cared for. Then Dr. Pearson arrived. He checked her breathing and pulse. "Exhaustion," he said. "Rest for a few days." Before he left, another knock sounded. Lucas stood in the doorway, hat in hand, blue eyes warm with concern. "Feeling better, Miss Norwood?" "Much," she said softly. "Thank you for carrying me." "Anyone would have helped." The doctor snorted. Not everyone would have carried her half a mile. Lucas ignored the comment, but his ears reddened slightly. When he left, Beatrice felt an unexpected pull in her heart. She didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but she knew this. The cowboy who carried her had changed everything. What if the person who saved your life was the same person your heart began to trust before you even understood why? That thought circled in Beatrice's mind from the moment she opened her eyes the next morning. Sunlight filtered through lace curtains, warm and gentle. For the first time in days, she felt strong enough to sit upright without fear of collapsing. The sounds of Dry Creek drifted through the window, wagon wheels, distant voices, a hammer striking at the blacksmith's shop. Life outside was already moving forward. And Beatrice, she was ready to join it again. A knock sounded. "Good morning, Miss Norwood," Martha Whitaker said as she stepped inside with a tray. "Breakfast and fresh water for washing." Beatrice managed a grateful smile. "I feel much better today, truly." Martha helped her to the small table by the window. The eggs, toast, and tea tasted better than any meal she had eaten in weeks. Strength returned with every bite. Warmth did too, warmth that came from more than just food. She felt cared for, safe, and welcome in a way she had not felt since before leaving Boston. "Lucas rode out early," Martha said as she fastened the buttons on Beatrice's fresh dress. "He asked me to tell you he hopes you're improving." Beatrice tried to hide the way her heart fluttered. "He is very kind." Quote. "That he is," Martha said knowingly. "Too kind sometimes." With Martha's steady arm supporting her, Beatrice walked downstairs to the parlor. The short journey exhausted her more than she liked to admit, but sitting upright in a real chair felt wonderful. The parlor was warm and inviting, with books lining one wall and sunlight streaming across the carpet. Through the front window, she could see Dry Creek's main street, dusty, busy, lively, her new home. Throughout the day, several townspeople came by to welcome her. Some offered food. Others brought small gifts or simply wanted to meet the new schoolteacher. The mayor assured her the schoolhouse would be ready for her when she recovered. Mrs. Henderson brought her a hand-drawn map of the town. Even the newspaper editor came hoping for a story. Everyone was kind. Everyone cared. But Beatrice found her thoughts often wandering to one person. Late that afternoon, the boarding house door opened, and Lucas Whitaker stepped inside. He brought with him the scent of horses, fresh air, and something Beatrice found both steady and comforting. "You're up," Lucas said, removing his hat respectfully. "Barely," she admitted with a smile, "but feeling far better thanks to your mother." "And thanks to your strength," he said. "Some folks don't bounce back so quick." He sat across from her, unsure at first, as though he didn't want to disturb her. His blue eyes studied her face with quiet concern. She found herself wishing he would stay longer, wishing she could thank him more properly. They spoke softly until Martha returned from the store. Beatrice wished their conversation could have gone on forever, but Martha insisted the young teacher needed more rest. Lucas helped her up the stairs again, his hand warm and steady under her elbow. When he reached her door, he paused. "Doc says you'll be fine," he said quietly. "I'm glad." "So am I," she replied. "Sleep well, Miss Norwood." "Good night, Lucas." Her heart whispered the last word long after he had walked away. The next days passed quickly. Beatrice regained enough strength to visit the schoolhouse. She spent hours reviewing textbooks and learning the names of her future students. Dr. Pearson declared her fit to move into the small teacher's cottage behind the school, and Martha helped her carry her clothes and books across town. The cottage was simple but charming, with white curtains and polished wooden floors. Just 2 rooms, but clean and quiet. A space of her own. Later that week, as the sun dipped low behind the mountains, someone knocked at her cottage door. Beatrice opened it to find Lucas standing there, hat in hand. A shy smile. "Welcome gift," he said, offering her a small package wrapped in brown paper. Inside was a wooden bookmark carved with wildflowers. "You made this," she said softly. Lucas shrugged lightly. "Helps pass time on long rides." "It's beautiful," she whispered. "Thank you." Their eyes held longer than either intended. Something warm, something unspoken. "I was wondering," Lucas said, clearing his throat, "if you might like a riding lesson this Saturday. You mentioned wanting to learn properly." Beatrice hesitated only for a breath. "I would like that very much." Asterisk. Saturday came with a clear blue sky stretching wide across the Wyoming land. Lucas arrived at her cottage with 2 horses, his black stallion Midnight, and a gentle sorrel mare named Daisy. "She's perfect for beginners," Lucas said as he helped Beatrice approach. Beatrice reached out her hand. Daisy sniffed gently, then nudged her palm. Beatrice laughed softly. "She likes you," Lucas said with a smile that warmed her more than the sun. He taught her how to mount, how to hold the reins, how to sit upright without fear. They rode slowly through the meadows beyond town, sunlight catching on wildflowers and distant streams. Beatrice felt more free than she had in years. When Lucas praised her balance and courage, she felt a pride that spread through her chest like fire. They stopped by a small stream under cottonwood trees. Lucas helped her to the ground. Her legs trembled from the ride, but she laughed at the feeling. "You did well," Lucas said, handing her a piece of bread and cheese, "better than most first-timers." "Thanks to a patient teacher," she answered. They talked about Boston, Dry Creek, their pasts, and their hopes. Lucas listened with quiet focus. She listened to him too. Each word from him seemed honest and steady, like the land he worked. When they rode home, the sun was sinking into gold behind the mountains. At her door, Lucas stepped closer than usual. "I'm glad you came west," he said softly. "Dry Creek needed a good teacher." "And I needed a place to belong," she replied. They stood close, too close, almost close enough for a first kiss. But Lucas stepped back gently, tipping his hat. "Good night, Beatrice." "Good night, Lucas." Asterisk. The weeks that followed were filled with school days, evening visits to the boarding house, chess games, and Sunday rides. As the leaves began to turn gold, everyone in town noticed the connection between the teacher and the cowboy. Everyone except Lucas. Whenever their hands brushed, he pulled back too quickly. Whenever their eyes met, he looked away too soon. Something held him back, something from his past, something he did not yet say. Then came the Harvest Festival. Children ran through the square. Music played. Food filled the tables. Lanterns glowed as dusk fell. And when Lucas walked toward her through the crowd, wearing a clean shirt and vest, Beatrice felt her heart soar. They talked. They laughed. They shared cider under the afternoon sun. And when the band began to play a slow waltz, Lucas held out his hand. "May I have this dance, Miss Norwood?" "Yes," she whispered. His hand rested gently at her waist. Her hand rested lightly on his shoulder. They moved together slowly, softly, naturally. The world around them faded. "Beatrice," he said quietly, leaning closer. "There's something I've been wanting to ask you." But before he could finish, a rider galloped into the square, shouting the word that froze everyone in place. "Fire! The Wilson barn is burning!" The moment shattered. Lucas squeezed her hand once. "I have to go." "Be careful," she said, her voice tight, and then he ran. Hours later, long after midnight, the men returned from the fire. Beatatrice rushed to help the injured. Lucas limped toward her, his shirt streaked with soot. "You're hurt," she said, reaching for him. "I'm all right," he answered, though he winced as he moved his shoulder. "Could have been worse." She reached up and wiped soot from his cheek with her thumb. His breath caught, his hand closed gently around hers. "It would take more than a burning barn to keep me from coming back to you," he said softly. Her heart stopped. Before she could answer, voices called out, pulling him away. "Tomorrow," Lucas promised. But tomorrow brought more work, more people, more interruptions, more days without a chance to finish his words. By Friday evening, Beatatrice wondered if she had imagined everything. She was cleaning her classroom when a knock came. Lucas stood in the doorway, hat in hand. "I've missed you," he said. "I've missed you too," she whispered. He stepped closer. "Beatatrice, may I court you properly?" Her heart finally felt free. "Yes, Lucas, with all my heart." And for the first time, he kissed her, soft, warm, full of all the feelings he had held back for weeks. Everything she had hoped for began in that one quiet moment in the empty schoolhouse. What if the moment you finally accept someone's love is the same moment your future begins to open like a door you never knew was waiting? That was what Beatrice felt with every heartbeat as she stood in Lucas Whitaker's arms after their first kiss. From that night forward, nothing between them felt unsure anymore. Lucas no longer held his feelings back. He walked her home every evening after school. He brought her firewood before the first snow. He took her riding on Sundays, teaching her how to guide Daisy through snowy meadows and across frozen streams. He joined her for dinner at the cottage, and she learned he liked his coffee strong and his food simple. As winter rolled in, the cold winds swept across Wyoming, but Beatrice felt warm every day because Lucas was part of her life now. When heavy snow fell in November, Lucas spent an entire afternoon reinforcing her cottage roof and filling a shed with firewood. "Winters here can be harsh," he said while hammering boards. "I want you safe." She smiled softly. "I feel safe when you're near." Lucas froze for a moment, then smiled back in a way that made her heart jump. They celebrated Christmas Eve at the boarding house. The church service was warm and beautiful, candles glowing against the snow outside. Afterward, they walked back to the house together. Snowflakes drifted down around them, soft and silent. "Beatrice," Lucas said, stopping beneath the stars, "I have something for you." He handed her a small carved wooden box. She opened it with trembling fingers. Inside lay a simple gold ring with a single shining stone. Her breath caught. "Beatrice Norwood," Lucas said gently, taking the ring from the box. "I love you. I loved you from the moment I carried you off that depot platform. I want a life with you. Will you marry me?" Warm tears filled her eyes. "Yes, Lucas, yes." Quote, he slipped the ring onto her finger and kissed her under the falling snow. After that night, the entire town buzzed with joy. People offered congratulations everywhere she went. Martha hugged her tight and whispered, "Welcome to the family, dear." In the months that followed, Lucas built them a house, a sturdy two-story home on a small piece of land just beyond Dry Creek. Beatrice chose the curtains, the paint, and the placement of the kitchen table. Lucas built wide window seats just because he knew she loved to read in the sunlight. "Your home should feel like yours," he told her. "A place you never regret choosing." She touched his cheek and whispered, "My home is wherever you are." The wedding took place in May. Wildflowers carpeted the fields. The sky was bright blue. The little white church overflowed with the whole town. Children from her school covered the pews with fresh blooms and sang a hymn as she walked down the aisle. Beatrice wore a gown she had sewn with Martha, Lucas stood waiting at the front, his blue eyes shining with love so strong she nearly cried before reaching him. Reverend Henderson blessed them. Lucas kissed her gently. The town cheered loudly enough to shake the windows. They rode together to their new home that evening. At the doorway, Lucas lifted her in his arms again, just as he had the very first day they met. "Welcome home, Mrs. Whitaker." Beatrice felt tears of pure joy rise. "I love you, Lucas." That first night in their new house was quiet and warm. They lay together in the dark, her head resting on his chest. Lucas held her close, whispering that she was the best miracle of his life. She knew, without doubt, she belonged nowhere except with him. The years after their wedding were full of life. They had 2 children, Elizabeth Martha with her mother's eyes, and William Lucas with his father's grin. Beatrice continued teaching for several years before staying home to raise the children, then returned as a substitute when needed. Lucas expanded his horse training business. People traveled from towns miles away to bring him wild mustangs. He taught Beatrice enough that she could help each summer. She loved the work almost as much as she loved watching him handle the animals with calm confidence. Dry Creek grew as the railroad brought more settlers. New houses, new stores, new faces. But the Whitaker family stayed at the heart of the town everyone knew and trusted. One day, 10 years after their wedding, Lucas surprised Beatrice with a trip into the mountains. They rode together on midnight, and Daisy up a winding trail through tall pines. At the top, beside a clear lake, stood a small cabin that Lucas had built with his own hands. "For us," he said softly. "A place to rest. A place for just us." They spent a week there, just the 2 of them, the sound of the water, the whisper of the trees, the warmth of his arms. The quiet peace she had never known in Boston. One evening, as the sun painted the mountains gold, Lucas took her hand. "Any regrets about coming west?" he asked. She turned to him with a smile, her eyes shining with certainty. "Not one. I found my life the day I collapsed at that depot. Because you caught me. And because you carried me home when I needed it most." Lucas pulled her close, holding her the same way he had held her years before when she was weak and frightened and new to the world. Only now she was strong, loved, home. In his arms, under the Wyoming sky, Beatrice knew she had found everything she had ever searched for. A home, a family, and the cowboy who lifted her when she fell, not just onto his horse, but into the rest of her life.